We all are only 1 degree removed from knowing someone who is being impacted by workplace violence or some form of online exploitation. This issue filters into employee wellness, impacting engagement at work. Let's bridge this gap by bringing awareness and education to these pressing issues and shield the vulnerable. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Shield the Vulnerable. I've got a really cool, amazing guest here today, Clara Vanine. Clara is the Chief Empowerment and Partnership Officers at Marber Securities. Marber, you help wealth management firms to navigate their cybersecurity journey with confidence. And well, that all sounds cool to everybody. If that's not what we're here to talk about today. I got to know Clara, who's just got such an amazing empowerment journey. Clara, when we first met, you told me your story that began about 10 years ago, where you were a victim of intimate partner violence. And what really threw me through a loop when you were telling me about it was that your partner at the time worked in law enforcement. And that hit me on
Yes.
like that struck such a chord with me, having, spent like 15 years in that world. So Clara is here today to share her story. Thank you for being here today, Clara. You're just an amazing human being. You are such an inspiration to women, everybody that you touch their lives, and you got so many cool things that you're up to. So welcome and thank you for being here
Thank
today.
you. Thank you, David. And thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And I love sharing my story. And I think when we share, we empower others and we empower ourselves too. So thank you
Yeah,
so much for the
it's
opportunity to join you.
it's it's such an inspirational story that you have. I mean, even just now when we were talking before recording, some of the things that you were talking about and other people you've connected to just kind of gave me some goosebumps hearing, what it is that they go through. And this podcast comes at a really interesting time. I just put out a podcast today with another amazing woman, Kate Alexander, who has started an organization called End Violence Everywhere.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's the same story where she had almost lost her life at the hands of IPV, intimate partner violence, and such an inspirational story. And it's so amazing to see women who are taking what happened to them, making it for them, making it for others, not letting their pain or suffering go without doing so many good things. So let's open it up. I know you're an open book about your story. And
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's one of the coolest things because it's when others that hear these stories like IPV, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, however somebody calls it or knows it as, isn't, you know, if you ask somebody like, draw me a picture of the person or what does that person look like this is something that does not discriminate against any demographic, it doesn't discriminate against gender. It doesn't discriminate against where you live. It's not somebody who's living in isolation. Like it's people who could be out there in the open who are like, there's this beautiful facade about them. They're showing up in public. They're doing all these things. But behind the
Yes,
scenes, there's something's going on.
there's something going on. And for the most part, it's not at all times, but that person that smiles a lot, that it's, portraying or showing extremely happiness um, towards life, a lot of times those are the ones that are actually struggling. I think, and I was that person. And so
Hmm.
I do know that this is a reality, and there's so many other women, or men, or humans in general. There are dealing and living something very similar right now, and you have no idea because they show up every
Right.
day to work. They look amazing. They put themselves together. They speak well. They smile. They're friendly. They are compassionate, so you wouldn't imagine. And that person was me, and I see that
Yeah.
every single day. But there's something beautiful about it. For some reason, the ones that struggle the most with going through abuse, they are the nicest people you will ever meet. And you may not understand why. It's not that they're just putting on a mask. I think when you go through so much suffering in life
Hmm.
and you're hurting so much, your perception changes and you just see people differently. So the fact that you're going through something so painful doesn't mean that you become a miserable person and you're suddenly attacking the world and and blaming everyone or hurting everyone around you. It's the opposite. At least for me, it was the opposite. The more pain I was going through, the more loving I was, the more caring I
Really?
was, the more I wanted to give and help people and bring a smile to others and really empower them. For
Was
some
that just
reason,
directed at others, or was that to your partner as well? Did you show up that way for the person who's causing all of this harm?
oh, many times, but not because he was harming me. I think abuse is something that it's very confusing, very deep because you become mentally sick, right?
Hmm.
It's someone that's taking away your life, your ability to breathe, that's really dragging you down, taking all your energy, but you're still attached to them because they make you believe that they are all that you have. They are your entire world and existence. And without them, you're unable to build a life. You're unable to set yourself free and actually create something of your own. You think you depend on them.
Yeah.
So and it's very hard, and I know we see in society so many women going through something so painful, and you may even question them, okay, but why don't you just leave? Why don't you just step back? Why are you in this? So you like to be there. You hear that a lot. So are you in
Yeah.
this relationship because you love? You must love because you're there. And it's
So I'll say when working as a police officer myself and being to hundreds and hundreds of domestic violence incidents, I can say there was nothing more painful for me. And it also came from a lack of understanding of saying, why, no matter how hard I tried or worked, why won't this person leave? I've got the door open for them. I will take them to a safe place. And they won't, and they shut down. And that, like, it took me a long time to understand why. And it took me being educated by a lot of women who have, later on that I like learned who have talked to me about their experiences. So, like, let's break that down a little bit. Let's talk about that. And from your point of view, though, from somebody who was in the thick of that going, it's not just that easy to get up and walk away.
It's nearly sometimes it's nearly impossible. It feels like you're just going to die that way and your life is over because you become very mentally ill. You become attached. You're suddenly attached to misery. You're attached to the pain. But the reason you're attached to the pain is because you're living with a narcissist. You're living with an abuser that hurts you, stabs you, and later on they also make you believe that they're healing you somehow. There's
Really. Just through total psychological control and manipulation.
total
Yeah.
psychological control, and it's heavy because they hurt you, they will take everything away from you, and then they take care of you, so
Yeah.
you feel, wow, this is all I have. He's taking care of me, I'm loved.
Yeah. I've always said this about this, and this is a very direct statement. I don't mean it to upset anybody, but I've always believed, and all wounds can heal, psychological or physical. But to me, that emotional and psychological harm to me always upset me more than seeing physical harm on somebody because I'm like, those wounds can heal and they can heal quickly and they can go away. Um, you think, okay, you're like, okay, with that one I can see the pain, but I always wondered, and you could feel it, that sense of internal pain that somebody had, and seeing this person at one point in time in their life who was this perfect being, and they still are,
Yes.
but there's so much pain and hurt there, and you know that it's inside, and it's like there's nothing I can do right now in this moment to close that wound up.
Yeah,
And that's difficult. And that pain that you live with is difficult. And it takes a long time to heal from it. And so
it takes a lifetime.
you do a really cool thing now, and you work in energy healing.
I do.
And tell me about that journey and going through it for yourself,
Well,
but
as I was
others.
going as I was going through the 9 years of painful, extreme abuse, I what gave me strength, what kept me alive was teaching yoga and also having my Reiki studio where I worked with energy healing. So, like I said, my pain did not turn me into a miserable person, but instead it completely changed my world. It made me fall in love with empowering and helping others. It gave me a sense of fulfillment. It kept me
Hmm.
alive. So
It kept you alive.
it did. It kept me alive. It was my everything. I think without yoga and Reiki, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be alive. Everything I went through was it was so painful that I'm telling you, I don't think I would be here today speaking with you. So I think Reiki brought me a different perspective of life. And every time I felt that I could help others achieve a life that was worthwhile, I could help them feel better somehow or get them back into life and engaging into life. That gave me a sense of fulfilled and that kept me alive. But the truth is when I went back home, my life was miserable. So I had to hide my own at my address. I couldn't share with anyone where I lived. I lived in a prison and I don't think people would ever believe. Like I told you the other day, the first time I shared on Facebook, I had a panic attack because
Right.
it was so hard. I have so many followers on Facebook and I think people used to see me as the person who heals, the person who empowers and oh, who's Clara? She's so calm and she's so, you know, patient and she brings so much healing and love into the world. That's how people used to see me. They used to come to me for help so that they could, live a better life. And that person who was giving so much suddenly opened up about a 9 years chapter of her life that was so painful on social media. So it was really, really hard because my first thought was, oh my God, I think people are going to think I'm a fraud,
Hmm.
that I'm not real, that everything I did was not real. And I was just putting a mask and pretending I was someone that I was not. But it's not true. It's me. It was me the entire time and it still is. It's just that the pain empowered me to create something different, to
Hmm.
create a life of my own and I was able to do that through yoga because it was the only moment I was able to escape and
Yeah.
not fully. By the time I finished a yoga class or a Reiki healing session with a client, I had my phone being bombarded and I was being threatened and I knew my night was going to be miserable. Maybe I was even going to sleep in my car that night, in in the freezing weather in Connecticut, like I did many times. But so but that healing journey of helping others was my moment of safety. That part of my life was
Yeah.
Clara's life that I
So
created.
let me ask you two questions about that. One, when did you discover energy healing and Reiki? Was it before you had ever been involved in intimate partner violence? Was it during that journey? Like while you were actively involved in it? Because you're talking right now, like so like you were doing this
Yes.
work while you were experiencing this at the same time.
So I discovered Reiki many years ago. I was probably 17 years old. I was living in Brazil and I took it was a Reiki training, and Reiki it literally changed me. I had amazing spiritual experiences, and I loved it. I've always been
Hmm.
very deeply spiritually connected, not in a religious way, but with the human aspect of life that goes beyond
Yeah.
this physical existence. But and then after years, I didn't really touch Reiki at all. And um, during my time in Connecticut, I took another Reiki certification and I went back to Reiki. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, and I was so overwhelmed, and I needed something else. And it was all due through the abuse, right? And at the time, the abuser who it's actually funny, but the abuser who's controlling, who's trying to keep me in that prison, agreed. Maybe you should take Reiki classes or move on with your yoga certification.
Really?
And I'm very supportive of it. So it was a way of, but in his mind, it was also a way of, you have to do something that I'm able to control. If you're
Mm-hmm.
doing anything else that you're working for other people, I can't control you. Right. So you have to do something that I can control. And it was a way of, okay, let me let her smile. Let me let her feel that she's suddenly independent and she's able to socialize and has and have something of her own. And
Yeah.
and I did that. It wasn't easy. Most of the times throughout my certification, I was exhausted with 2, 3 hours of sleep, like I did for 9 years, and being abused and yelled and called abusive, horrible names, and it's just a destructive life. But I kept moving. I kept going with the Reiki. I kept going with yoga, and
Mm-hmm.
it kept growing. It kept happening. And when I realized I had so many followers, and I was super busy teaching one class after the other, and I was fulfilled. And
Yeah.
then all the misery I had with me throughout the day from my nights, I would say for 9 years, I probably had 2, 3 hours of sleep. It was very, very,
Wow.
very rough. Until this day, I don't sleep as much because it's you PTSD takes years. You're still
Yeah.
in that, it was a nightmare of a
Mm-hmm.
night at all times. So I used to bring that pain and that misery and shift it into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to see one of my yoga classes, I think you will understand because they're very unique. They're not movement, perfection of movement related. They're very deep. And I talk throughout the entire class as well. And all of that was built through pain.
Wow. When you were doing like yoga and Reiki sessions for other women, and you're going through your own journey of abuse, were you like, did women ever confide in you that that was something that they're experiencing and you're like, that there's a resonance there and a connection that you wanted to help them, but you're still going like, how do I help myself through this?
If they were experiencing something similar,
Yeah.
oh, I've helped plenty of them. And
At
that's
the
the
same
reason
time that
why.
you were going through it.
Yes, at the same time I
That's,
was going through it, and that's why when I shared for the first time on social media, I had my full-blown panic attack because I felt like a fraud because I was helping so many of them. And quite honestly, till this day I do. And I helped to change their lives. I've had people that came to me and, "Oh, I just got divorced. I left this person. You inspired me. Thank you so much." And I heard that so many times. And of course I would be very happy and fulfilled, but at the same time there was that sense of what's happening to my life? Why am I still here? I'm able to
hmm
help others. I understand what's happening to me. I can see clear now. But I would say in around 2022 I was able to see clear. I was able to understand everything I was living and everything I experienced for 9 years and how sick I was, you
hmm
know, in that relationship. But I was still there. In 2022 I was still there. And but I knew it was wrong, and I knew I could not do that to myself anymore. And that's when I
So
started
what's that turn?
fighting
What's
back.
where do the tides turn that you know that you can no longer stay in this?
It I would say that years of yoga slowly built up in my system and you may not believe, and I woke up. I woke up and I suddenly felt, wow, I wasted 10 years of my life. I want to live. I want to feel alive. I'm done with this. No one is going to control me or hold me back. I want to live. So I started being more sociable where I worked. I started connecting with people more, and I was really fighting the abuser. And that's when I put my life in risk, right? Because I started fighting the abuser and I said I'm going to live my life. You're no longer controlling me or dictating what, real estate team I join, what company I work with, or what clients I take. No, I'm living. I deserve to have a life and to exist and not be, you know, in those chains. So that's when I would say around November of 2022, when I was very, very exhausted. I probably didn't get sleep for a month, and I had pains all over my body. It was winter in Connecticut. And I remember that I joined a real estate team that was a new real estate team, and I was very excited about it. And he created this a whole problem, and he said, "You're not doing this, you're not doing that," using horrible words that it's not even worth it mentioning in this beautiful podcast. And I fought and I said, "No, yes, I'm doing it." And I remember he forced me out of the house on Christmas, and I had so much anxiety that I could barely drive my car to a friend's house. And it took me probably 5 hours to get to her house because I had to stop every second because I was shaking and panic, lacking sleep. My heart was racing, and I was alone, and I had my dog in the car. So it was my dog and I. And that moment, it hit me. I remember parking close to an intersection, and it was really cold, and it was Christmas. And I said to myself, that's enough. If I don't leave now, I'm going to die. I knew I was going to die because my physical body was depleted. My mind was destroyed. I barely knew who I was anymore. And and I lost myself completely. So I said to myself, it's time to change this. And of course, that was not the end yet, right? Of course,
Right.
eventually I slept on the streets inside a car for 2 days. And then I went back home because that's what the abuser does. Oh, come back. We have to celebrate and just and then treats you like a princess and everything. And eventually I went back because it was my only option, right? I didn't have much family support in Connecticut, and I was pretty much on my own, and no one knew my story because the version they knew of Clara was only the positive and beautiful one. So I went back, I went back home and was exhausted. But after that, I think it was when I started really fighting the abuser, and he became, physically aggressive. And I ended up getting hurt a few times until the last time when I actually left the house. And I was able to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, but I did. I think I had to reach my limit. But my limit took 9 years, which sadly, my limit took many, many years for me to actually wake up. And I
Hmm.
realized I'm in my late 30s now, and I lost all this time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what people call like the late 30s crisis. Maybe that sense that I didn't live what
Right.
happened to me. Hopefully it was something like that. And
And so when you leave, because the one of the most volatile times is the preceding couple of weeks after, did you feel safe the second you left? Was it like, did you have to go through a certain level of hell to get to the other side, or were you instantly free? What did you feel? What, you
No, I
know?
was not instantly free. No, I did not feel safe at all. I ended up renting a small room on top of a friend's house, and I was living there with my dog. And I was very scared. I found myself alone and scared. I had one friend that was not really a friend, but someone that was willing to help, someone I knew for 5 months, and she was the one that picked me up with her car and said, you're coming to my house. And but I was filled with fear, and I kept teaching, I kept working, I kept doing my real estate showings. He showed up in a few of my classes, and that was extremely scary. In 9 years, he
Wow.
never joined one single yoga class. And one
Right.
day, I it's a Sunday, I show up to teach. I'm already going through everything, and he's there on his mat, and the class was full. My heart
What a brazen
was
move.
I never forgot that day. My heart was racing so bad. I started shaking, and that was my safe space. And then I walk in and he's on a
Unbelievable.
yoga mat. And okay, in that moment, I didn't know what to do. My world crashed. I was frozen. And then I turned on the music and I put on the mic, and the class was full, and he was in the back of the class, and I couldn't just expose everything to everyone. And I was thinking to myself, what do I do? I felt there were times that I felt that I was just going to pass out. So I got really creative that day. I put on the mic and I asked everyone to be in silence with their hands in prayer. And it I couldn't speak for the first 10 minutes. So I made it look like the silence was part of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It wasn't, but it turned out that it was beautiful anyways. But he was in the back of the class, and at some point in the middle of the class, I started I didn't even realize it was involuntary. I started like touching one of my yogi students that would come to class very often. I started like trying to get her, and she didn't understand. And then I tried to do that to the other person. I tried to ask for help. I felt like I needed help, and my hands were shaking. So I had to teach a full class for an hour with the abuser in that class. And I just kept thinking, what if he's just going to kill me? What is he doing here? It was probably the most uncomfortable situation that I've ever experienced, but I kept strong. I kept teaching and I brought value to the class. But there were times where I felt I need to ask for help. And I remember
Hmm.
asking for help to someone, and I don't think they understood that I was asking for help. They probably thought I was doing something, you know, yoga related, but I was really asking for help. I was in shock. And he started doing that a lot. I used to teach bar, which is jazz and dancing, it was in the same studio. And it was a gym. So he went to a treadmill right in front of the glass studio, and he watched my entire class. So he was showing up. He was showing up
Yeah.
everywhere I was. He was following me. And at that point, I was really scared. So I had to put a restraining order. And
Hmm.
that was very hard to do because I was still attached. Remember, you're sick, you're afraid, but you still have a bond. You have an attachment with the abuser that you can't explain. You still don't want to harm that person. So I was
Yeah.
still thinking of him. I don't want to harm him. I don't want him to lose his job. I don't want, why was I even still trying to protect an abuser? But that's very common when you're in a situation like that, when you're
It's very
going
like
through abuse.
Stockholm syndrome type of.
And I'm sure as you're helping so many others, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
Why is that person she's here physically hurt, but she's still trying to protect the abuser? Why? So I was that person. And but I did. It was the hardest thing I did. And then I had, of course, the cops showing up at my house to know if I was okay, because by the time you put a restraining order, the entire department knows. And then I had, um other like sergeants and other people calling and everything. And it was overwhelming. I It took a long
Yeah.
time. It was not like this. And I only got divorced in 2023 in June. Divorced to, I was already living in Florida and moving on with my life, but the actual divorce, the papers, took a long time. And it was a lot of resources that I had to use to get divorced and fight the abuser, because you seek for help even, and there's not many institutions that will actually help you. Well, they are there to help you, but it's so hard. You have to file paperwork, and it takes months and years. And then they will call you at some point, and I didn't have time. And think
Right.
about it, so many others don't have time. If you're seeking for an institution that's going to help someone who's going through abuse, you need help now. You
Hmm.
can't just go there and fill out paperwork and wait for 5 months from now for them to call you and actually, hey, we're here to help you with shelter, or we're here to give you guidance. No, I needed help immediately,
Yeah.
So, thankfully I was able to allocate resources and be creative and fight the abuser. But what if I wasn't able to? What if
Hmm.
I wasn't that lucky at the time? And I know there's so many others that need help, and they need help right now, and the help is just not there. All those institutions, and make it sound beautiful that they are actually there to support, to help, but it's not
They're not.
immediate help. And
Yeah.
then, sometimes it's too late. You're already killed. And by then I was receiving video. I remember receiving a video on my phone of a bird, a dead bird, a black dead bird. And I still have that video. And that video went to court. And then the abuser was holding that black bird and saying, "Oh, my love," something like, "Oh, my love, extremely sweet. Do you see life is so short?
Wow.
Life is so short. And do you see this bird? This bird changed my day. It reminded me of how life is short, and we have to make this life worthwhile. Let's talk. It was it
Such a
I don't
manipulative, like underlying message behind it. And it's just
uh
wild, like wildly crazy to me. The thoughts that people come up with, abusers,
yes.
and the ways of like things that the everyday average person would never even think to try to
Yes,
manipulate or control somebody like that.
a dead bird. And then it's a message. There's a message behind it, and creating social media pages of photos of me and my dog as if we were dead.
Yeah.
Life doesn't end here. Life. So I was terrified. I knew I
Hmm.
wasn't going to make it. Like, at some point, if I didn't take action, I wasn't going to be alive, because he thought he was my owner for many years. And I understand. He couldn't really survive with the idea that I was setting myself free, that I was breaking free from that prison, that I was breaking those chains, and I was going to move on with my life and create the life I deserve. He couldn't put up with that, and he wasn't going to give up. So it took months of fighting, fighting this abuser, and hoping that that nightmare would end at some point.
What becomes the point where they stop? What was that where it was done? He just too
Oh
exhausted,
no.
too tired.
Oh, the point
Yeah.
was really having an amazing attorney.
Okay.
And uh, and uh, i i had to spend more than I could. And
Hmm.
I had to really find find resources, it that I didn't even know I could come up with, to pay for an attorney. Like I said, there's no free system that's actually going to help you immediately.
Hmm.
Everything takes a long time, and I needed to survive. I needed my freedom.
Yeah.
And it was a long time fighting. I had to relocate. I had to move out of the state, because I did not feel safe there. And that's the first thing I did. I moved to Florida, and it was the best thing I did. But also, it was also in hope that I would find a safe place to be, where I was no longer scared to go to the grocery store, or to go to work, or even drive around. So I did. I had to leave the state, and continue the fight, continue to fight. And he did not give up that quick. He At some point he had to, because everything was exposed. Everything was exposed to court, videos, everything. And I guess he just had no choice, unless he was, willing to completely destroy his career, which he seemed very obsessed about.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's when he stopped. But until this day, I don't feel safe going, back to to Connecticut. I will at some point, but I guess I think
Just
everything
not
is
now.
fine, but there's, this person is still alive and it's still out there. And I don't
Hmm.
believe people change. This person is no longer abusing me, but it's at some point it will abuse someone else. So
Hmm.
it's it's hard, it's a very, very challenging
Yeah.
situation. It's very, very hard to go through.
Yeah. Claire, one thing, like one big goal that I have through sharing messages like this and through this podcast and the education that we run and training and all of that stuff is whether a woman or male, whoever, an individual is going through intimate partner violence or they suspect that it could be coming. They're in an early on relationship, but the warning signs are there. Or they've been 10 years into this, like you have, or longer. No matter where somebody's at in their journey, what is one or two things that you would tell somebody? Because you just went through, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody won't do this. Like it's going to be, I may have to relocate. It's going to be too costly to do this, or, I don't have the resources.
Yep.
But I think you're proof that it can be done and that there is sunshine on the other side of this, that you have to just go through it. What is that one or two things that you would tell somebody about how to safely escape and to that it's going to be okay before it turns to them losing their life?
Well, I can't really guarantee that it's safely okay. When you're fighting an abuser, you're never 100% safe.
Hmm.
But one thing I can share, you have to find strength within yourself. You have to find life within you, that life that you have, but it's just hiding in there. And you have to love yourself in such a deep way that you're willing to fight, you're willing to go through the challenges of leaving an abuser. You're willing to go through the challenges of relocating, or finding a safe home to live, or finding a job, whatever it is. You have to be so strong to the point that there's nothing there in your path that's going to knock you down. It's really, really deep inner strength. It's really choosing your life or choosing someone else. So I would say a practice that helps me a lot, and it's so simple. So if there's someone who's listening and is actually going through abuse and is hurting right now and is afraid to leave, and I understand because I've been there. One of the things I loved doing was placing both of my hands in my heart and noticing my heartbeat. And I used to tell myself, and I still do through my yoga classes, that as long as my heart's beating, I'm alive. And that can bring in so much courage, because your heart is your courage. So you feel, if your heart's beating right now, that means you're courageous. That means courage is naturally there. You
Hmm.
have it. So listen to your heartbeat. There's value. The only value in life is that our hearts is beating right now, that your heart is pumping, your blood's pulsing through your veins, and you are alive. Think about losing this value. Think about losing this heartbeat, not feeling your blood pulsing through your veins. That means losing everything. And you do not want to lose everything. You're in this experience to live, to feel, not to avoid. So if you stay, you lose it all. You lose your own existence, and there's nothing else to look forward to. If you move forward, it's the unknown. You don't know where you're going. It's not going to be easy. In fact, it may be extremely overwhelming. And you're going to think that you're dying so many times, because I did, and that you're falling apart and you cannot rise. But if
Hmm.
you just don't give up and you move forward and you feel that heartbeat and you choose that heartbeat, which is you, and you remain courageous, everything shifts. There's no miserable experience that you can face ahead as you move forward that can be more painful than remaining in a prison of your own creation, a prison that a prison that takes it all from you. So you're going to hurt. Life is painful,
Yeah.
but choose to hurt in freedom, not in a prison.
I
You can
love
set
that.
yourself free. You can break the chains, and you can remove yourself from that prison of your own creation and create a life that's worthwhile, even if there is suffering. But there's suffering in freedom is the way of suffering. But
So much better.
suffering in a
I
prison
th
is pointless.
I
you
think
know?
honestly that there's like a tipping point when you phrase it like that, that if you're going to suffer anyways, you may as well do it in freedom,
Yes, you
right?
will.
That's magic. I think that truly, truly is, because I think that just words like that are enough for somebody who may be in this situation to hear this and go, that makes sense. That makes so much sense.
Yes, you're putting in a
It
beautiful
does.
way.
Clara, where can people find you? Where can they reach out, connect with you? Marber
Well,
Security, anything that you do, like where?
yes. So I'm a social media person. You can find me on social media easily. Uh, Clara Vanine or
Clara,
Marvine V can find me on LinkedIn.
we're gonna do a quick edit here because I froze or you froze. So we're gonna do a quick cut here.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna go back to saying where can people find you, okay? We'll edit this
Yes,
after.
perfect.
Okay. Clara, where can people find you at? You got so much to share. Where can they connect with you at?
So I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. You can find me at Marvine V on Instagram, and I share empowering, motivational um, sayings every single day. And I share a lot of my work at Marber Security as well. And I'm also on Facebook. So you will
Amazing.
find me there. It's Clara Vanine. And I can send it to you. You can also share on the screen. So I'm here. I'm always open to connect. If there's anyone who would love to share their story or just talk to someone who went through something similar. I'm here. I love connecting with others. I love empowering, and I'm an open book. I'm happy to share my
Amazing.
experience, and I love listening as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so, so much for that. And thank you for your vulnerability when you first stepped out of this and when you first shared your story on Facebook, I know. But to be able to come forward and continue to share your story, I think it's honestly, it's people who step into the light and say, this happened to me and I don't want it to happen to others, and you're going to be okay. And just the way I can't wrap this up on any better way to say, would you rather suffer in that state of pain, or would you rather suffer in freedom? And that suffering and freedom begins to turn to light. You just have to trust that time will take you there. If you are somebody who is experiencing intimate partner violence, or you know somebody that's going through this, you're going to be okay. You're going to be safe. You
Yes.
can find that power within to take those steps forward. And I will go through and I will say this on behalf of law enforcement. First of all, it's you're not all painted with the same brush. But it unfortunately does happen. There are people who work difficult jobs, who do
Yes.
things that they should not do. And I hear you, I see you, I know sometimes that your pain is real, but at no time is it ever okay to take that freedom away from others, to harm others, to cause that physical pain. You are a protector in this world. You need to be a protector. If you're somebody who is experiencing that through that lens of law enforcement or other emergency services, there's help out there for you to be able to fix this, to be able to right the ship, because I know sometimes that those people are hurting inside, but at no time does that become a justification for harming others. And Clara, I'm so happy that you're still here today to share and tell your story, and to be an inspiration to women and others all over. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, David. To thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed sharing my story, and hopefully, I can help others through sharing my own experience. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
You're welcome. Everybody, that has been another episode of Shield the Vulnerable. We will see you on the next one.